2024-2025 winter outlook. This is the GEFS model. The This obviously isn't a forecast, but these are the trade winds essentially, and these positive values. I know this is a long time out, but it's the only thing we have, so it's worth using. Um, these positive values indicate trade winds favorable for El Nino. The negative values are trade winds favorable for La Nina. And in recent weeks, and well, not weeks, in the recent couple of weeks, it's been trade winds favorable for El Nino's development. Not that El Nino is going to develop. You see these positive values, and I'll go to the SSTs later and show you how they've risen quite a bit in the recent weeks, or in the recent couple of weeks, and that's going to change. Really going into late November and early December, starting to see more of those negative values. I know people often conflate weaker than average trade winds, but with El Nino, but it's weird. Trust me. The purple is La Nina. So the point of this is that the trade winds will become favorable for La Nina's development in early to mid December, but then it shows them weakening this model anyway, and this is a long time. It was December 20th, but it shows it weakening uh the trade winds anyway by December 20th. So my thinking is that if La Nina hasn't developed by December 15th, it won't develop at all. My belief right now is that it won't develop. I don't see it. The SSTs would have to fully crash in December. Uh, they're probably going to rise again in mid-January. By mid-January, they usually do with the El Nino or La Nina. The peak is usually in December, so it just based on historically what happens, it peaks in December. If the SST values don't go below 0.5 consistently in December, it's probably over for La Nina. I don't think La Nina is developing, but that's the trade winds basically. So they'll become favorable for La Nina's development. And now I'll look at some of the models before I go into my forecast. I have my forecast right here, but first I'll go into the models and some of the oscillations that I'm looking at. This is the CANSIPS, the Canadian model. I agree with this in general, keeping as a cold neutral to maybe a very weak La Nina, and then transitioning over to an El Nino. I would say this is the model I agree with the most. I don't see some of the other models take it to like a moderate La Nina. I'd be very surprised if that happens. If we got a moderate La Nina, just given how it's gone and given the high activity of the MJO too, that typically weakens any La Nina or El Nino event. But yeah, it keeps this La Nina very weak. This might even be a cold neutral. It's hard for me to tell. Um, if we look at our trade wind patterns, the trade winds become favorable for a La Nina, but then they become unfavorable and they start to become more favorable for an El Nino to start to develop. So that's the CANSIPS model on the SSTs and the trade winds. Now, if we look at our heights on the CANSIPS model, you can see it's not great, but we have ridging everywhere pretty much. So would just be a torch fest in North America. It doesn't look good. I'm not gonna lie to you. On the heights, and it doesn't look on the temperatures either. I can go to 2 meter temperature anomalies, and you can see really just locking all the cold up over far northern U.S. and Western Canada. Not much cold air to speak of. If you're not in those areas. So that's why most models are showing milder than average conditions. Typical La Nina stuff, even though it shows ENSO neutrals, so a typical La Nina pattern, um, which is interesting, even though it shows more of an ENSO neutral look. Now, I'll go back and I'll go to the CFS monthly model. This is another model. Good our SST anomalies. This is one I think is kind of interesting. It shows a moderate La Nina, moderate to strong, maybe even. This is definitely not going to be a strong La Nina. I think it's rare that, I mean, it's not rare. It's unlikely that it's going to be a moderate one even. But what's interesting, it shows La Nina hanging on for a while. I mean, it really hangs on until the spring, and that's not something that most models have been showing. It also shows the Central Pacific La Nina. If you were to take a worst case scenario for sea surface temperatures, this would probably be at Central Pacific La Nina. No molecule there lot in the Central Pacific. No cooling of the PDO. Well, maybe it was weird cooling, but mainly no cooling of the PDO, which is something I'll talk about later. Um, that the problem with Central Pacific La Nina is it doesn't allow the MJO to be in a favorable phase because of decreased convection, like around the date line, basically, around 180 degrees. Right here is the date line. It's weird, but Central Pacific is much worse. La Ninas are bad already for, well, at least for my area, but for some areas they're good. But Central Pacific is much warmer than normal, basically. But CFS is not exactly the most accurate model. Uh, this is a possibility, definitely, but like I said, you would need something pretty crazy in December. Those SSTs would have to collapse pretty rapidly. And we look at our trade winds. This shows much more favorable than average trade winds, and the trade winds never really become favorable for El Nino's development. It's quite a different story than the CANSIPs. The reason I'm not really trusting this model is actually because of their temperature forecast. I mean, their season temperature forecast could be correct, but this temperature forecast makes no sense. It shows a more of a La Nina pattern for the first 2 months. For December, February, I should say. For December, February, maybe not on the heights, but on the temperature map, it looks more like La Nina, and then January, it looks like more like ENSO neutral. So, if we look here, December, the cold air is in Western Canada, and it's more for most of the U.S., but the cold air is in Western Canada. And then in January, it's weird. It's like it shows. This isn't the correct though. I messed up. But in previous model runs, it's been showing like this would be a pattern more typical of ENSO neutral. So this is like an La Nina pattern, ENSO neutral, and then La Nina again. It's just been doing weird things. This isn't showing it this model run, but it's been doing that on and off, where it shows December and February as La Nina, and then January as ENSO neutral in terms of the temperature pattern. By the way, ENSO neutral means cold in the Northeast. That's like so. Like if you want cold in the Northeast, you hope for ENSO neutral. I can pull up the effects. Actually, I'll do that. Actually, I won't do that. But yeah, that's ENSO neutral. But yeah. So the CFS model, I don't know about it. These climate models, they're low confidence forecasts. They're trying to predict stuff that's 3 months out. In general, I agree with this though. Like in general, but yeah. Towards the NMME model, it doesn't have any trade winds. Let's look at SST anomalies, and you can see shows a fairly strong La Nina. This would be like weak to moderate, I think, and then it doesn't collide. It shows something similar to the CFS. So CFS showing cool neutral to quick flip to El Nino. This not as keen on that flip to El Nino, and then there's no trade winds and there's no heights. So let's go directly to the 2 meter temperature anomalies. Not very good. November torching, that's not a surprise. But yeah, not much cold air to speak of in the US. I mean, we'll have to see what happens. I do think this winter has the opportunity to be a blowtorch winter. I don't think that's gonna happen, but you definitely run the risk of some 22-20. No, that wouldn't be. That was cold in some areas, but it could torch. There could be a blowtorch on the winter. I think that's still a possibility. So yeah, that's all the models. This is the PDO Pacific Decadal Oscillation, and North Pacific when it's positive, it's cooler than normal. It's negative, it's warmer than normal. And right now we are in a marine heat wave. The PDO was its most negative it's ever been actually in October, and it's cooled off quite a bit, and I'll show that right after this. But the PDO is not favorable for cold and snow in the east. It is favorable for cold and snow in the west, and when it works in tandem with La Nina, it can really increase snow chances in the east, in the mid Atlantic and northeast, and really increase those snow chances in the northwest, especially. So negative PDO is often conflated with um, a La Nina. Positive PDO typically correlated with an El Nino. So if ENSO were warm, you typically see cooling in that North Pacific. If ENSO were to cool and we get a moderate La Nina, you'd expect even more warming. Why I say like that in the North Pacific. So ENSO is key to that too. So we don't know exactly what's gonna happen with ENSO, so that's one of the reasons it's unclear still. But yeah, very strong negative PDO that's not favorable for snow. But the PDO isn't an end all be all. ENSO usually outclasses the PDO. And they also have the QBO and the Solar Max, and these are both. This is weird. This is the heights. These are both not good. The Solar Max increased sun activity. You can imagine that means more warm temperatures. The West QBO typically encourages more uh, stronger polar vortex, blocking the cold up at the poles. For some reason, this is showing it like higher pressure over Greenland and Alaska and Canada. I don't know where this comes from. Maybe they work in tandem with each other, but that was just something that I thought was worth noting, that the West QB and the Solar Max both not good, but maybe when they're combined together, they are good. I'm not a how does this? I'm not an expert in the QBO or the Solar Max solar cycles, so don't trust me on this. But this looks okay. But I don't. I just thought I'd talk about, but I don't know. Anyway, these are the SST anomalies. Actually, I'm gonna go to OAST. This is what how do I say it? The CPC uses. So I believe this is what the CPC uses. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, these are our SST anomalies. See, like La Nina and El Niño, this is the ENSO region. It just doesn't look like La Nina or um is developing. This doesn't like it doesn't look like a developing uh La Nina. If we go back 15 days, it kind of it looked better. It looked better. It looked like a developing La Nina. Now it doesn't look like a developing La Nina. Another thing to talk about. Look at this North Pacific. Okay, we still have warmer than average waters in the North Pacific, but if I go back, you know, a month ago, much warmer. It's much warmer. So that's what I mean. The PDO has cooled off quite a bit. Quite a bit. It's still too warm. If you want to get snow, it's still too cold up here. In Alaska, we like warmer waters in Alaska. We don't like cooler waters in Alaska. Or off the coast of Alaska. When there's warmer waters off the coast of Alaska, it encourages a negative EPO. Basically, when you get negative EPO, it's like a region right here. You typically get colder forced southward. So basically, the trends in the equatorial Pacific and the North Pacific are good for cold and snow in the Northeast, really. But it might not hold. Like I said, trade winds will become more favorable for for La Nina's development. But we'll see what happens. In terms of our 15-day change, you can see warming, especially in Nino 1+2, and I'll actually get to what the sea surface temperatures are now, but mostly cooling. You see spots of warming, but for the most part, you can tell that this is cooling of the waters in the North Pacific. So the waters are cooled in the North Pacific. They're also starting to cool in the Atlantic. For the most part, it's cooling down. There's blobs of warming. This is interesting. The whether or not the Atlantic is warm or cold is actually a double-edged sword. When it's warmer, it adds more moisture, more fuel to storms, but also warmer, so there's more warm air. So it's a double-edged sword. So if you want stronger storms, that's good, but then that also means there's gonna be more warm air intrusions and more warm air ingrained in those storms anyway. So it's a double-edged sword. But the Atlantic is trending colder, which can be good or bad depending on how you look at it. So anyway, yeah, that's the SSTs, And if you look at our um, SST anomalies in the NSAR regions, this is Nino region 3.4, and actually I'm gonna start with Nino region 1.2 because I think it illustrates it. It's been, going up and down. That's what most of the Nino regions have been doing. And right now, and the reason they've been going up and down is because La Nina will start to develop, and then, easterly trade winds will take over, or how do I say this? The MJO, there'll be some MJO event that punches La Nina in the mouth, and that's happened a couple of times. Something will happen to slow La Nina's development, and right now, Nino 1 plus 2 is at 0.512, but 0.5 degrees above average. 1 plus 2 is not the monitoring region, but just to give you an idea, 0.5 degrees is the borderline for El Nino. So Nino 1 plus 2 is really, it's warmed a lot. It was at 0.8, and it's in early November, and it's all the way up to 0.5. It was negative 0.8, now it's 0.5, so it's warmed like 1.3 degrees Celsius. So a lot of warming going on in Nino 1 plus 2, which is interesting. That would mean that we probably are not going to see a specific La Nina if La Nina were to happen, but you never know. But yeah, a lot of warming in Nino 1 plus 2. Nino 3 also warming quite a bit. It was at 0.5 degrees. Now it's at basically very slightly above average, 0.017 degrees above average. But yeah, this this has also warmed a lot in the past couple of weeks. And Nino 3.4 also warming a lot at its highest value since at least mid-August. And then we have Nino 4, which is also warmed up to 0.265. So coldest waters right now focused in Nino 3.4, Nino 3.4, Nino 3, but all Nino regions are above normal, and that really, I have a hard time believing that they're all gonna crash, and especially Nino 3.4 is the monitoring region. It's the one we care about, but I have trouble with that La Nina is going to develop. I just don't see it. I'm not gonna lie. We should be in the peak of La Nina right now. I the trade winds are not favorable for La Nina, and they will become favorable. But this is my main thinking right now. In terms of what the Climate Prediction Center is saying, this is just La Nina. Okay, let's just make this very clear. This is what you'd put out in a La Nina. Colder than normal conditions in the Northwest. This indicates a stronger than normal Pacific jet, Ohio Valley storm track, Great Lakes storm track. It just is what you put out in a La Nina. So this just assumes this is just a generic, and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, there really is nothing wrong with it. I would have put out something similar in October, mid October, if I had to do it. So we'll see what they do for November. But yeah, this. I'm not surprised by this. I am not surprised by this one bit. But anyway, yeah, this is just lining. Yeah. So I'm looking at my forecast. This is my winter forecast for 2024-2025, and I have a mix of El Nino and not El Nino, La Nina, and so neutral. I basically think there's going to be a north-south split. Generally in La Nina, we expect mostly cold air in the north and west. In a neutral, we expect most of that cold air, or the coldest temperatures in the northeast. I'm not really sure why Rhode Island is not. I expect Rhode Island to have slightly below normal temperatures. I don't know what's going on there. But the far south, I think they're going to experience much above average temperatures. I don't have much below average temperatures. Well, maybe not much above average, but they'll experience above average temperatures, especially the southwest. I don't really much above average. Maybe the southeast will be more average, but they'll experience above average temperatures in the most southern tier. Even you really need an El Nino and a very strong subtropical jet to get colder than normal conditions across the south. Even if we are in an ENSO neutral, it's still typically warmer across the south. So Um, I don't think we'll be in El Nino by any means. At most, we'll be in a warm neutral by February, but it's probably gonna be much warmer across the south, and then in California, maybe this is a southern northern split. I can't you know um do that, but the northern California will probably see a slightly below average temperatures. Southern Cali will probably see above average temperatures, or below normal in northern Cali, above normal in southern Cali, so it splits up. It's slightly above normal. Same thing in Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. You can kind of imagine central states below normal. It's oftentimes in La Nina the jet stream dips in the central states. It's not favorable for cold in the southern central states, but I do think it'll be around normal, like the CPC said, and then um, Midwest, Ohio Valley, Northeast, it will be slightly colder than normal, especially later in the winter. I think for the eastern half, the winter will be very backlogged because I think the PDO will cool, and that will help cold in the east. Also, ENSO warming or not going into La Nina, also cold in the east in February. But yeah, and then Arkansas, Tennessee, much of the southern Mid Atlantic and northern Southeast is slightly above normal. Temperatures: Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, and Oklahoma, I think, will be slightly above normal. For these regions, weak El Ninos and warm neutrals are probably the best case scenario if talking about cold. That's not going to happen. I think Virginia will probably see cooler temperatures in South Carolina, for example, but I don't see it. And West Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware are about normal temperatures. So yeah, that's the temperature forecast. Um, I think it's gonna be a mix of a La Nina and so neutral. But yeah, Northwest should be doing the best in terms of temperatures. Now, yes, I want to leave. Now the precipitation, I think there's gonna be a very strong Pacific jet. That's why, especially early in the winter, mainly early in the winter. That's why I have this is above normal precip. This is slightly above normal precip, and then Southwest, far south, also has below normal precip, and then the Ohio Valley and the Mid Atlantic is above normal precipitation because the interneutral typically encourages wetter than normal conditions here across these four southern Mid Atlantic states, and La Nina typically encourages most of the precipitation to fall in the Ohio Valley. I think it'll take flavors of both, but I do forecast that the Atlantic moisture will be more than normal, and that Gulf moisture, which is warmer than normal, will mean more precipitation for a lot of these areas. All the other areas pretty much just equal chances. Central states it should be about average for the central states. It usually is in La Nina and so neutral, and then Cali, Nevada, and Utah, Colorado. Once again, north south split likely. Northern Cali, more than average. Southern Cali, less than average. Same for Nevada, Utah, Colorado. Um, my just because you have next is my snow map. I'm not really confident about this because it's hard to predict snow so late out. But this is my snow map. It's my precipitation map. This is my snow map. Uh, this I don't know about this, but this is well below average snow, slightly below average snow, above average snow. I don't really have a well below average snow. Or well above average snow. I don't have well above average snow, but you can see well above average snow in the northernmost tier of the country. This is typical in a La Nina. Um, the storm track will probably look something like this, if you ask me, especially in the first month of the summer in December. When the polar jet is at its strongest, basically. So yeah, I expect this is my snow map. Most of the northern tier of the country to get above average snow. I think the northwest will get the most above average, but I didn't put it well above average. And then the northeast, I think we'll see above average snowfall. Um, uh, especially later in the season. I think it's gonna be very backlogged. I think it's gonna take on many flavors of 13, 14. Not that it's gonna be as snowy as 13, 14, but it might it might take on many characteristics of 13, 14 in a sense that it's going to be very back heavy, back half heavy, which is not typical of a La Nina. But anyway, yeah, southern U.S. well below average snow, and then in the again Cali again it's probably north south, but all these states are north south splits, and then the Mid Atlantic, southern Mid Atlantic especially should be about average. I did put well above average precipitation for Virginia, for example, but because of the storm track, the main thing is because of the storm track in the Ohio Valley, when storms move up like this, they tend to draw milder air up north, and the cold air that comes from Canada on the backside is kind of blocked off. So you get oftentimes it won't be it'll be rain for cities along 95. So I think 95 isn't going to do too well this year. New York is slightly above average snow, but I think New York City is going to see below average snow. I think Philly's going to see below average snow. I think Baltimore's going to see below average snow. I think DC is going to see below average snow. It won't be too bad. Like this is very slightly below average, but maybe we'll see average snow. It's hard. It's hard to forecast snow in my opinion. We're trying to forecast 3+ months out, so this is a low confidence forecast. But yeah, this is my winter outlook.